people will say to us, you signed up for this, when we say it's hard, when we whether you're a spouse or you're in the military, people hear this. I think any service member, any veteran, any spouse, even the children, unfortunately didn't sign up for this, but we hear that, oh, they didn't sign up for this, but you did. So you can't complain, or you can't say that it's hard, but we don't know what we don't know. And even though we did sign up for it, it doesn't make it any less hard. It doesn't make it any less difficult to navigate.
Being on the spouse side too, I will say that I feel way more in the trenches at home than I ever did in the Marine Corps. So I had a staff. I was a logistics officer. So I had many capable people that executed the things that I delegated. At home, it's all me, right? Like I am all of those people and I wear all of those hats. And I remember when the kids were little thinking, like people would say like, oh, being in the Marine Corps, that must be so hard. I mean, it was hard, right? Physically, mentally. But being a stay-at-home mom with 3 little kids, dare I say, was harder.
Welcome to the WingSpace Podcast, a place to take up space, where we talk about all things wellness, from nutrition to movement to sleep and stress, and so much more. With me, your host, Jennifer Voorhaar, along with special guests and experts within our Hope and Healing wellness community. Let's jump in.
This podcast is not a replacement for mental health treatment or professional health care. In case of crisis or emergency, please contact your local healthcare provider or dial 911.
Hey there, and welcome to the WingSpace Podcast, a place to take up space. I am excited today as we are in the season of celebrating our veterans that we have 2 team members here at Hope and Healing who are not only veterans themselves, but also spouses of service members. And so today we're going to talk about all things veteran in terms of lessons learned, experiences to share. And our hope is that those veterans and spouses that are listening might just grab a nugget of information that might help them along their way as they serve our country. Before we jump into that, though, I do encourage you to like and subscribe. It does help us to get the message out about mental health and wellness to those folks that are looking for information online and in the podcast space. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Tracy and Jenny to the podcast. It's so great to have both of you here today, ladies. Let's start with you, Jenny. Can you share with our listeners, I know you've been on the podcast before, but for those that may not have heard you before, who are you and what do you do here at Hope and Healing?
Yep. So my name is Jenny, and I've been here for 3 years. This week, actually, is my anniversary with Hope and Healing. I'm a therapist here. People that work with me are usually, first responders, military members and their families, and people, kind of dealing with those high trauma, high stress situations.
And what about you, Tracy? I know you've spent a lot of time on the podcast with me, but just for new listeners, who are you with our team and what do you do?
Hi, so I'm Tracy and I am a licensed clinical nutritionist. So I see clients with individual goals in the clinic, but also help with a lot of our workshops.
So both of you are veterans and both of you are spouses to men who either are currently serving or did serve. So I would just invite you, let's start with you again, Jenny, if you could just share with us a little bit about your own experience in the military and kind of where you and your family are now with regards to current service.
Sure. So I will also add on one other identity in that, and that's that I grew up in the military as well. So my dad and his dad were also retirees from the Air Force. So there really hasn't been a day in my life where I haven't been in the military in some sense or fashion. I grew up PCSing and traveling, moving every 2 to 3 years with our family. And then I joined the Air Force right out of high school. So I served in the military for a few years. And then while I was in the military, like a lot of us young women, I met a strapping young lad and we got married and started a family. And then I left the military. So we've been 24 years active duty. He's actually planning to retire next year. So it's been quite an adventure, just an amazing experience that, ups and downs, but overall I can't complain. It's just been something that I've really enjoyed. I think it's one of the main parts of my identity is the military. And I think one of the biggest struggles leaving it is like, I'm not in the club anymore. Like, how do I feel about not being in the club anymore? Because it has become such a big part of, it's been the only part of my life that's been consistent forever.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And you're right. Being a military child as well is a part of that identity. So thanks for sharing that and including that. What about you, Tracy?
Sure. And I'm going to have to jump in and say once a Marine, always a Marine. So I haven't left the club, or don't feel like I've left the club. It's still a very big part of who I am and the way I think and operate. So I do not come from a military background. I think my parents were quite surprised when I said I wanted to, go in the military. So my journey started in about when I graduated high school in 1992. I took an ROTC scholarship to college. And then upon graduation, I was commissioned in in the Marine Corps and served as a logistics officer. So I spent 7.5 years on active duty and then some reserve time. Early on in my career as well, I met my husband. We've been married for 26 years. So for the first 4 or 5 years, we juggled a lot of deployments and we were apart a lot, hence starting a family a little bit later. And part of that time was, I know Jenny had some deployments overseas, like she was mentioning. I had the fabulous opportunity to live on a ship with the Navy for 6 months. So maybe that's where a little bit of our experiences differ.
And your husband is also retired. Is that correct? He's no longer active duty, although once a Marine, always a Marine for him as well, right?
Well, correct. So he retired in 2013. We made the decision for him to retire right at 20 years. We were here at Pax River, his last duty station, and decided to retire and stay here, which has really been neat. And this is kind of probably linking into one of your next questions, is it allowed us to stay here and stay on the team because as a helicopter pilot and engineer, he is still supporting naval aviation as a civilian here. So it's almost like nothing, even though everything changed, nothing changed because we're still supporting it.
Yeah, that's awesome. It goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway, that I thank both of you for your service, not only as active duty service members yourself, but also in the very important role of a military spouse. I say to people sometimes that, I kind of halfway live that life, as a police officer's wife in terms of, we're on shift work and all those things. I know what it's like to not have him for hours at a time. I don't know what it's like to not have him around for days and weeks and months at a time. So similar yet very, very different. So I applaud you for that. And it is the reason why we chose to do this episode right around the time that we celebrate Veterans Day, because it truly is a celebration of you and your family and your sacrifices that you've made. So I can imagine that we could spend a lot of time talking about this next kind of series of questions, but I'm just curious, and we'll just start with you, Jenny, again. Are there lessons that you've learned along the way, things that you would want veterans and spouses to know, maybe things you might do differently or you would really want to make sure that you do? I know that's a big question, but feel free to take some time and answer it.
Oh, yeah, that's a loaded question. There's so many things. How do you put a bullet list to 24 years? But I feel like the things that I've learned along the way, one of the most important things is that you can handle more than you think you can, and you know more than you give yourself credit for. I don't think there's ever been a situation that I felt prepared to handle. And here I am, 100% success rate, having handled it on the other side. So I do feel like that's something that I have to remind myself of. Every time we PCS, every time we have a new obstacle, there's just so many things. I think people who don't move that often don't realize you have to do in that time frame and that you have to overcome, and what it means for the smallest things. Like, I think spouses joke a lot about like having to find a new hairdresser and having to register your kids for school and, all the little things, getting to the grocery store. But those little things, like in a life that you're so comfortable and used to, mean a lot. That stability means a lot. So when the smallest things like that are just turned upside down, it can mean quite an obstacle for the bigger things that we inevitably have to get through. So I would say one of the most important things I've learned along the way is that you can handle more than you think you can, and you know more than you give yourself credit for. I also say that to my children, like, we may not know what's coming, but we know that we will figure it out together. And so I think of all of these different things that we've been challenged to overcome. I think of it as a full family event. It's not something that I know how to do. It's not something that my husband knows how to do. It's something that we're figuring out as we go, and we will find a way, one foot in front of the other, which feels incredibly difficult some days. But again, here we are, 100% success rate on the other side of it. So the thing that is stable is that we've always figured it out. We've always figured it out together, which leads me to the other thing that I think is very, very important. One of the lessons that I've learned, you have to join a community and build a family wherever you are. You have to. Like, we don't have that when you're transplanted from one place to another. Like, just recently, last year, we left Southern Maryland and now we're in Southwest Illinois, near St. Louis, right on the Illinois side of St. Louis. And the first thing I did was join a book club and get involved in the booster club with my daughter's sports, and join a gym, like a private studio gym, that I could get to know the people more intimately. And those are my friends. And I don't know if they knew that right away, but they are my friends now. And I told them that right away, like, you guys know you're my friends, And so building a community, getting involved in the community that you're in, that's your family. Like, there are some times when I really think about it and reflect on it, I'm closer to a lot of the people who I've grown up with, had babies with, lost members of the military. I'm closer to them sometimes than the people I grew up in the house with, and people that we would say are our like biological families. Sometimes the family that we've built along the way is the ones we're closer to. We've gone through life together, we've gone through death together. And so I feel like those are the moments that make us feel connected, and they make those challenges that we go through meaningful and give us purpose in life. So joining a community, building a family wherever you are, I think is the other thing I've learned to do along the way. and probably even in this season, coming up on Thanksgiving is something that we've always done. We've always hosted like the single airmen, or, the families who are away from their families, can't get back home or whatever. It's one of our favorite things to do, is to like open our house and have people in. And those are sometimes the best memories that we have. And, kind of speaking to that, immersing yourself. So like, we've had a lot of opportunity to live overseas. My first assignment was to Misawa, Japan. And while I was there, I deployed to the Middle East twice. And in all of that experience, I found myself like drawn to the different cultures. And then we left, and from Japan, my next assignment was to Aviano, Italy. So like, poor me, right? Like, Japan, Middle East, Italy, like, not that bad, right? Everybody else complains about where they get assigned, but I'm like, I'm traveling the world. Little old me gets to see the world. And then, we moved in the States for a little bit, and then we moved to Germany. And so in each of those assignments, even in the United States, like, I was in Florida for some time, I was in New England for some time, I was in North Dakota, I was in Maryland, now I'm in the Midwest again. So I think immersing yourself in the different cultures, even in the regions that are different in the US, is an important thing too, because your experience just becomes so vast and broad. And I think that you can learn a lot from how other people go through things too, not just from ourselves. So I found that was something that was just rich in our experience, like being able to have been exposed to the way that the same historical things that were happening in the US were happening for US people outside the US. And I think that that was just a very unique experience to have. I feel like it comes into play in a lot of the work that I do as a professional. Also, as a therapist, I think that I draw on a lot of those experiences and the cultures that I was part of. Which leads me to another point of lessons learned. And this might be my last one, because I know that Tracy has probably great things to share too. But I would say, and we were talking about this a little bit right before we started, it's so important as a military spouse, I think, to invest in yourself, not to lose yourself and your identity in just being the spouse of someone else. And this is an honorable thing. Like you mentioned, Jen, it is an honorable thing to be the military spouse, the person who is kind of the anchor, the glue that holds the family together. But I really feel like even in my profession, one of the things is that I don't want to lose my identity while I'm saving someone else or serving someone else, because then I have not a lot to offer them as a person who's helping. So invest in yourself, invest in your identity, invest in your career, you're actually investing in your family by doing that, and investing in your community by doing that as well. And at the end of it, kind of where I am on the precipice of this retirement, I have something that I can say is mine too. And it makes me stand taller, and I don't feel as lost in that identity. Like, I'm still going to have to adjust to that new way of living, because I'm not a Marine. So mine does, like, I feel like I do leave the club, but I still feel like I'll be affiliated with it. I still want to work within the military community. I feel like that's where my identity will be. But I do think that investing in you is just as important, because it's actually investing in them as well. So I don't know if those are like really wise lessons. I try to say only brilliant things, but that's what I can offer from my experience. And hopefully it helps others the way that it's helped me along the way.
Yeah, that's great. Those are really rich ideas to consider. Tracy, your experience may be different than Jenny's, and I'd love to know what your lessons are that you've learned and what you would want others to know.
Well, I wish I had heard Jenny's advice like 30 years ago. I would initially say, because, we've been on the retired side for quite a while now, is that I promise you it works out. Like, you get that TRICARE for life, and that retirement paycheck, even right now, is coming in. So there is life on the other side of this. And we all have to move on at some point. And I think, having gone through that process, I'm able to encourage friends, neighbors, saying like, hey, it's going to work out. Because everyone's really nervous when they first step out, because it's been very secure for so long on that next job, that next thing. But we can do hard things, right? So I try to encourage people, like, it has to end at some point, right? And a lot of people, when they stay in for so long, they really have a hard time knowing, like, what else could I possibly do if I don't do this anymore? So, finding that balance. So that was kind of a piece that I would encourage you, Jenny, that life is really good on the other side, right? We still have all the memories. My stuff is not nearly as profound as Jenny's great advice, but I will have to say, because my active duty time was 1996 through 2006, prior to having a smartphone. I don't have pictures. I don't have documentation. I think I have a yearbook somewhere from the basic school, which was initial training that we do upon commissioning. I have Marine Corps ball pictures, which is both my husband and I in it every single time. I do not have a single picture of me in uniform or out in the field. I may have some, like, in a book somewhere that I developed from some deployments, but now I'm thinking, why didn't I? I remember back then my dad saying, oh, make sure you take some pictures. And I was like, oh, Dad, that's silly. Like, I don't need a picture of this. So I don't know that that's a problem anymore with technology and the way that we document everything in stories now. But I will say, like, keep maybe even a journal, some notes, just some memories, some dates. I may be a little embarrassed to say that, there's a couple friends in particular that I honor every year on the anniversary of their death. But there's a longer list of friends and fellow Marines that perhaps over the years have slipped away on my calendar and on my memories. Perhaps I should have kept a better list of that to honor that more consistently, remembering those things. So that's the more serious side of it. I will have to say, a couple lessons learned. One big one for us was real estate, right? Like, you're like, oh, my buddy bought a house everywhere he went, and now he's going to be a millionaire because they rent it out and then they're going to sell them. There was a guy that wrote a book named Kiyosaki, I think, years ago, and it worked out great for some people. It did not work out great for others. We never tried to follow that plan. However, the way our orders ebbed and flowed, we decided, like, real estate has not been our forte, and that's okay. But I don't regret making the decisions we made when we did it, because we were starting a family. So we bought a house. Who could have known what the market was going to do? Looking back, maybe I would have rented, or I would have lived on base a few more times. We did live on base when we came here initially before we bought a house. But at the end of the day, every single family has to do what's right for them, and not say, oh, it worked for the other guy, or someone else told me to do this. But really just kind of considering those things, because we never get to go back and be 25, 30, 35, or those types of things again. So again, that's it's easy to say now looking back at some of those decisions. But like Jenny had said with career type things, like, that's how we get to where we're at now, is because of all those decisions we've made in the past. So, and I will let everyone know that as you move a lot, it does seem daunting. However, that means you never truly have to deep clean your laundry room or pantry because you will move before you have to do that. So once I've been in a place for long enough, I'm like, oh man, like it's time to do that, because normally the movers would be coming.
Just because it's not profound, Tracy, doesn't mean that it's carrying that. As you were talking about deep cleaning the pantry, it made me think the last house that we purchased from a military family. And I asked for the window treatments as part of what would convey with the house. And she declined that and said that the house that we bought from them was their 10th house as a family. And the one thing that has hung in every single house are the window treatments. And so she took them, which, you know, in my mind, I was thinking, now I have these random holes in the wall and now I got to figure this all out. But then when I stepped back and looked at it from her perspective, that's an interesting thing to think that these window treatments are things that the rods and the curtains, right, have been in all 10 of those houses. We don't really think about material things in that way, but when you are moving every 2 to 3 years, you know, having some stability, even in your home, about, you know, a cherished item or something like that is probably really helpful, I would guess.
I think it's impressive that she always had windows that those same treatments would work on. But
I was going to say the same thing. I have used some of the same curtains and had to buy different curtain rods or different length curtains and use the same curtain rods. And I have a closet or a storage container now where I have curtains. And I think even when I was in Maryland, I brought some into the office, and was the first time I left curtains somewhere in all of my assignments, because they worked so well in the office there that I thought, I can't possibly take them to become part of this fixture, you know. But it is true. You have furniture that you bring from assignment to assignment, and it doesn't always work in every space. And sometimes you get rid of it and sometimes you don't. But it is one of the things that I would say as a service member and or a veteran and as a spouse, set up your house. Like, just do it. Take a week and just get the pictures on the wall, get the furniture in place so that you can start living there. So many people are like, oh my gosh, I don't know how you already have pictures on the wall. And I said, well, I can't afford to not to, because we have to start living here. This is home now, and it has to feel like home. So I do have a lot of the same decorations and like things from one house to another. It does feel like home almost right away because we have the same things. I know a lot of people choose to sell stuff and start over and buy new furniture and new picture frames and decorations and stuff. And I find the comfort in, and I think, you know, my husband and my children would agree that they find comfort in knowing, like, when we come into the house, like, it feels like home, it looks like home, it smells like home. It's the thing that's the same everywhere we go, even though the layout is different and the walls are different. But that's something that I feel like I've done in every assignment, and I take pride in that, knowing that I can set up a whole house in about 3 days. It's taking a little longer lately as I get a little older. I don't bounce back as easily, but I do like to set up the house.
It's so interesting that you say that, because Anastasia, who's one of our dear colleagues, she and her husband just moved, and I talked to her, I want to say within about 3 days of them moving. And she said that she had like one corner of boxes left to unpack and everything else was done. And I was like, wait a minute, done? And like pictures hung and everything? And she was like, oh yeah, we're good. The biggest problem she had was that her kitchen and her pantry were smaller than the previous house, and she was just having a hard time finding places for things to physically go. And so that idea of like setting up house, you know, they're only there for a short period of time, so make it home for as long as you can, makes a lot of sense.
So I have another idea, but it might not be right on top of that. But I just wanted to make sure, because since I didn't mention it earlier, about things that I would also either do differently or recommend, is especially for our service members that are women, is to have some type of mentor. I think it's really important for young women to not only be surrounded by young women and people in the same stage that they're in, but people who are several years ahead of them. So if someone is maybe newly married without kids, go find someone who's married with kids and be like, hey, how do you juggle all this? How did you make your decision? I think that's across all walks of lives, that we don't do a great job with that. And in the military especially, I think we need to do better with mentorship.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because we don't know what we don't know. What I've learned as a law enforcement spouse with teenage children, I could certainly share information to new law enforcement spouses who have little children, right? Like I've learned those lessons. And similarly, having someone that's been there and done that and figuring that out, especially when you yourself are the active duty service member navigating deployments and short stints out on ships and things like that. Yeah, having a mentor is probably vitally important, and maybe not something that they offer as a pipeline. You have to find that person yourself, I would assume.
Yeah, thinking back to when you mentioned that, Tracy, it made me think man, who were the people in my life at the times when I didn't know what I didn't know, and kind of pushed me along the way. And it also kind of going back to what you said earlier about, not having regrets, and with the real estate and the housing market, and just making decisions as you go. And I feel like along the way, there has always been someone, even when I was in the service. I remember on a deployment, and I think I've even shared this with a client before because we were talking about something relevant to it. I had an older lady who was kind of like a flight chief to me. She was over me in terms of my chain of command. And we were going through an election, and it was my first election I could vote in, and I was deployed, and I did not do the mail-in ballot. So shame on me. I missed my first election because of this. But she laid into me, and she was not kind about it. She made sure I knew, not only as a service member, but as a woman, how important it was to have my voice and to vote, and to, remember that wasn't something very long ago we didn't have the ability to do. And I just it's so small, the amount of time that little interaction with her was, but I still to this day, I never forgot how important that was, and how, probably because the way she talked to me about it wasn't very polite, but it just was very moving to me and lasting. But even that influenced the decisions I made later. And then those decisions influenced other decisions. And I think one of the things we were also talking about just before this was, I never could have imagined I would be here. When I went into the service, I was 17 when I signed up. I did a delayed enlistment program. So before 9/11, I had gone in and said, I want to be in the Air Force. And then that was my last year in high school. And I didn't know what I was signing up for when I did it, which is something else I'm going to speak to, because I think we hear this a lot as spouses too. But I didn't know, and I couldn't have predicted where I would be all these years later. As a service member, as a veteran, as a spouse, I couldn't have told you 24 years from now, I'm going to be a therapist in Southern Maryland, but I'll be living in Illinois, and my driver's license will be from Florida, and the address on that is from North Dakota. And, all these things that there's just so many different things about my life that I couldn't have predicted. But all of the things that I went through with the mentors who I had in my life at the time led me to the next thing, to the next thing. And then here I am, I showed up, and this is what I was always meant to do. I feel like I finally not arrived, because I don't think we ever really fully arrive, or lifelong learning, but I do feel like I found where I'm supposed to be. This was, and I had to go through those things to get to where I am today. As hard as they were going to be hard then, or they're going to be hard now, right? We don't get to pick a life without hard. It is just that way. But kind of what I was saying earlier is, people will say to us, you signed up for this, when we say it's hard, when we kind of, whether you're a spouse or you're in the military, people hear this. I think any service member, any veteran, any spouse, even the children, unfortunately didn't sign up for this, but we hear that, oh, they didn't sign up for this, but you did. So you can't complain, or you can't say that it's hard, but we don't know what we don't know. And even though we did sign up for it, it doesn't make it any less hard. It doesn't make it any less difficult to navigate. So those mentors along the way, I think, are so valuable, because just like you were saying, Tracy, about retirement, there is life on the other side. It is going to be okay. You will get through this. It may not be pretty, but you're going to get through it. And I appreciate that wisdom from you, Tracy, too, as somebody who's already gone through the retirement, but also Jen, as a spouse of somebody who's a first responder, that you're right. There is so much that you can offer to people who haven't gone through what you've already gone through, in terms of just motivation and encouragement too.
And being on the spouse side too, I will say that I feel way more in the trenches at home than I ever did in the Marine Corps. So I had a staff. I was a logistics officer. So I had many capable people that executed the things that I delegated. At home, it's all me, right? Like I am all of those people and I wear all of those hats. And I remember when the kids were little thinking, like people would say like, oh, being in the Marine Corps, that must be so hard. I mean, it was hard, right? Physically, mentally. But being a stay-at-home mom with 3 little kids, dare I say, was harder, at least for me, because there were times when my running joke was, I can't get 3 kids into the minivan with their shoes on, yet I could get a battalion of Marines across the world, right? Like the struggle is real. So I had many friends, like other stay-at-home mom friends that said like, wow, we feel really validated that you're like, this is really hard. Because it was a lot harder for me to be at home 24/7 than it was to put on my uniform and go to work. Right. But that was a choice that we made for me to get out and for Jim to stay in. Again, that may not be right for everybody. But yeah, I think that's really something to consider.
It's so true to feel validated in that, because the things I had to accomplish in the military were leaps and bounds ahead of what I had categorized as like hard for parents. And then when I was parenting, I always felt like, are you kidding me? How can I not handle this? Like, this feels so, like easy, on the outside until you're in it and all the things, and as a mom, but as a single person or as a young married person in active duty in the military, we kind of looked at those moms and been like, oh, must be nice to stay home. Or at least I did. I can't say that Tracy ever felt that way, but I think that I unfortunately went through a season of like, oh, that must be nice, stage that some of us go through until I was in it. And then I was eating my own words, and so like never say not my kid and not me, because it's definitely going to be your kid and it's definitely going to be you. I'm so glad you said that because it's so true. It's so true.
Think back to like early morning PT, 6 a.m. and these young single moms, daycare's not even open at 6 a.m. Yet then they'd be late for physical training and then, their NCOs would be mad and how hard it was. And back then, I'm not sure what it is now. It was like, you had 6 weeks. And then after those 6 weeks, it was like, get back in shape. Like the Marine Corps really didn't have a whole lot of wiggle room for that. I think now there's more paid or maternity leave and all that, but it was rough for those young women for sure.
And I also feel like I learned from that too. Like, even though I wasn't a mom to young children when I was active duty, my husband loves to refer to me as the off-base commander. It's a running joke in all of his offices that I'm the one who makes all the command decisions for the family. And it's true because I'm managing it all, right? Like I am the one that's the same in every place. And not because he's unreliable, but because the schedule of somebody in the military is not necessarily in their control. And it's 24 hours a day. Like you don't get to say like, well, I'm off the clock, that it just doesn't work that way when you're in the military. So I do think that I learned a lot from having to just do what was told. And like, you just have to find a way. There's no getting out of it. Like you're just going to do it. And so that has made the juggling of so many things that happen, like that I watched other people do and didn't have any idea how they could do it. And then I did it. And I was like, oh, I don't know. And sometimes even now people are like, I don't know how you do it, even though I'm not in the service, maybe just as a spouse, but whether it was grad school or, training for a marathon or whatever it might be, how did you do it? I don't know. One foot in front of the other. You just do. You just have to. Like there's no not doing it, So I did learn a lot from people, I feel like, who had to juggle all that when I didn't.
Well, and I appreciate that you talked about your family, the 24/7, right? And juggling all those things, because at the end of the day, the reason I got out was because we didn't want to have 2 of us on active duty and competitive deployments. We didn't have anyone to keep our kids. So I remember Colonel saying to me when I left, oh, you're quitting. And I was like, I'm not quitting. I'm transitioning out because I'm going to put family first. And I have never regretted that. Every now and then I think about what the retirement paycheck would have looked like had I stuck it out. But then I would have potentially missed a lot of things with my family. But I have to say, I got the best advice from a maintenance chief once. And he said to me, because he had 4 kids, busy, he was doing all the things. And he said, you know what, just at the end of the day, you just got to take care of your own grid square. grid square is something on a map, right? Like we have a lot of land nav, things like that in the Marine Corps. So I look at my home and my family as my grid square. And what if everyone took responsibility for their own grid square? We didn't worry about everybody else's grid square all the time, just our own. And I think, Jenny, it sounds like that's what you're able to do and you've been doing. And I think that like the person who told you about voting, like this chief that told me about, just take care of your grid square was really that piece of advice that I've really taken all these years.
Such great wisdom that you both have shared with us today. And I do feel like this is one of those episodes that we could just talk and talk and talk, because there's such a wealth of experience and lessons that you've learned. And I'm so grateful for everything that you shared. Again, I will say that I celebrate and I honor your service. I do feel like I would be remiss in not saying that I too come from a long line of service members. Although it was interesting because while my dad served in Vietnam, he didn't re-enlist in the military until I was in high school. And the funny joke in our family is that he chose to enlist in the service so that my brother wouldn't get drafted right around the first Gulf War. And then my brother ended up joining the Army anyway. So, my dad ended up retiring as a command sergeant major, and, dad went in to protect my brother who decided to go anyway. And grandfathers and uncles and my husband, and dare I say 12 and a half days, and I'll be a military mom. So truly celebrating and honoring you and your service and your family and the service that not only your spouses, but your children have given, the sacrifice. There aren't words to say how grateful I am. And I hope that our listeners can gain information from this, but also be in a mindset and a spirit of honoring those veterans and active duty service members and retirees around them. So again, thank you so much, ladies, for sharing. For those that are listening, if you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone. If you have a spouse that you just want to give a little bit of encouragement to, share this episode. Other veterans, retirees, up and coming military families, share this episode, because this was very rich and great information. So again, ladies, thank you so much. Listeners, thanks for being here, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.